Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. So from Navisite side, you've got myself, Naya Akhtar, who works as a channel manager. So Servnet are one of our partners that we work with. You've also got my colleague, Jonathan Green. He's our technical director in UK and Ireland. Just want to, first of all, thank you everyone for joining us on a Monday afternoon. The whole purpose of the WebEx today is just a kind of overview of DR as a service, as a concept, and more importantly, kind of how it affects your business, in terms of key benefits as well, and drivers, and also most importantly, in terms of our solutions and how we can help assist you going forward. Just to give you an overview, I will start off by giving a company introduction, and it will be my colleague, Jonathan Green, kind of going into more of a deep dive. So Navisite is a US company. We're taken over by Time Warner Cable about 2-3 years ago. After that, we merged with a company called Charter Communications. So if you go on our website, you'll see a kind of rebranded of the two entities as Spectrum Enterprise. Navisite kind of sits underneath that. We have data centers in the UK, US,
has joined the meeting.
900 employees. Globally, we have 600 IT accreditations, so for Microsoft, VMware, Commvault, Zerto, and our core services, cloud services, so your infrastructure application, DR, and data center services. We have offices in the UK, India, and US as well. So that's a company introduction. I'll give it to my colleague, Jonathan Green, who will give you a kind of DR deep dive.
Thanks, Naya. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. As Naya said, my name's John Green, Technical Solutions Director, and I'm going to sort of give an overview of disaster recovery as sort of DR as a service offerings and how hopefully we can help you. So I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Disasters are awful. A lot of companies who have a major outage never recover. There's figures bandied around of up to 60–70% of companies who have a major outage or a major loss of data never recover. Not sure I believe those figures. I'm sure it's a lot less than that, but even so, it's still something that you want to not have, basically, and there's an awful lot you can do in preparation to help yourself minimize the outages and the risks of losing data. So there's still a perception that disasters are actually out of your control, so things like storms, flash floods, civil unrest cause them. But as you can see from the graphic, approximately 60% of all disasters are still down to human error. Now there's a lot that can be done to cut that down, so things like process procedures of your company, process procedures of the company that's actually looking after your data, and also to have a really good DR as a service implementation in place in case that happens. You can also see from the graphic that those figures add up to a lot more than 100%, 60% human error, 56% unexpected updates. Well, the reason for that is one thing can cause a lot of different issues, so it can be in a lot of buckets. So, for example, in the weather, you could have a lightning strike which would cause maybe a fire or explosion down there to 26%, and obviously that fire could cause server room issues. So one thing could actually be in a lot of different buckets. So a lot of people think that having backup is actually your DR, and certainly backup should be part of your DR planning. It's a very important part, but there are some limitations to backup. Backup is a point in time. So if you need to restore from a certain point in time, say your environment is compromised somehow, and you need to recover from a day, a week, a month ago, then backup is your solution. Trouble is, with a DR, you need to get your solutions up and running as quickly as possible. There's minimum loss of data. Backup isn't the ideal solution for that. To restore from a backup, depending obviously on how big your environment is, could be anywhere from hours to days, and quite often it stretches into weeks if it's a really large deployment with lots and lots of tapes to restore, etc. It can take literally weeks to actually recover. And also, backups normally are only done once a day. So in theory, if you had backup every day at 12 o'clock and you had a disaster at 11:50, you'd lose nearly 24 hours worth of data, which some companies can get away with, but most companies nowadays cannot. They need to have a lot less loss of data. So the sort of better technology to use for DR is replication. I'll go into that in more detail as we go through. So just to give you an idea of the sort of losses, obviously every company is different, but for a company with 100 million yearly revenue, if they're just using backups and it takes 24 hours to recover, which is a perfectly reasonable time, it could be a lot longer than that, it's going to cost them on average over £500,000 in outages. Now, the next sort of technology is a snapshot base, so that's a lot quicker. So you could recover within about 4 hours. It's still going to cost you nearly £100,000. And the replication technologies should be able to recover easily within 30 minutes. It drops it down to 11K. So it's quite a difference in the sort of cost of the business over that sort of time. So I'm going to talk about a few different things. So I thought I'd just drill down into the terminology I'm going to use for anyone who's not familiar with it. So the two important ones are RTO and RPO. So RTO is the recovery time objective, and that's the amount of time it actually takes to get your environment up and running again. So some companies can get away with having a sort of quite long RTO, you know, a few hours, maybe even a few days. They could put a holding page, web page, if it's just a website, informational website. But a lot of companies have to have their environment up and running really, really quickly, and especially if you're a sort of a big internet company that's doing lots of transactions, even minutes of downtime can cost you thousands of pounds. So you've got to be up and running literally in seconds. The second one is the recovery point objective, and this is basically how much data will be lost in the case of a DR. So if you're using real-time replication, that should literally be 0 seconds worth of data. But if you're using things like backup, then it could be up to sort of 24 hours or longer. So again, that's something you have to look into, what your company can get away with. Obviously, the shorter times are the preferable, but they're normally the more expensive times. So it's you know, a business decision of what you actually require. So the next one underneath is vCAV, that's VMware vCloud Availability. That's a brand new technology, literally just been released. We're one of the first companies who can actually do it. We've helped VMware actually develop it. We've been beta testers, and I'll go into more details later. And then replication, so a couple of different main types of replication. So the first one is real time, and that's basically replication. The data gets replicated as soon as it changes. So as soon as you make a change on your production site, that immediately gets replicated across to your secondary site. So that's obviously the ideal scenario, but there are some shortcomings with it, and I'll go into those in more detail again. The next one is replication near real time. So it works in a very similar way, but instead of the data being replicated across at exactly as it happens, it's actually batched up, and you can set a schedule normally ranging anywhere from about 15 minutes up to about 24 hours of when you want that data copied across. So again, that's something that you need to decide as your business what you want to do, what you want to see. And the final one down there is DR as a service, DRaaS, and that's basically using a service provider like ourselves to actually host your DR environment. So it saves you having to host it in your own premises or in your data center. We can host it for you, saves you having to buy the equipment, set it all up and manage it. So a bit of a busy slide, this one, quite a few offerings on here. So the sort of two oldest ones in here are really double take and native application replication. So I'm sure everyone on the phone has either heard of double take or used it at some point in the past. It's a very good application. It's been around for a number of years. It's very configurable. As you can see, the RTO and RPOs are configurable. Couple of problems with it. It's actually installed as an application that sits on top of your operating system normally. So there's a bit more complexity to setting up. It's a bit more difficult to manage. It's also a little bit expensive, but it's very, very configurable. It will work in just about every use case you can think of. So it can do from physical environments to virtual, from virtual to physical, from multiple virtual machines into a single physical machine. So very configurable, but it has got some downsides. The other sort of quite old technology is the native application replication, and built into a lot of applications, you have this native replication built in. So most of the sort of databases, MySQL, SQL, Oracle, etc., are built in. The advantage to that is obviously it's built in, so there's no extra software to install. Normally it's included in the price, though on some applications you do have to sort of buy the next version up to get that technology built in, things like Oracle with enterprise versions, so that can cost some more, but for a lot of them it's actually built in, so it makes sense to use it if you have application to do it. Also things like Active Directory and the modern versions of Exchange, etc., with database availability groups have got that sort of technology built in. The other ones in here are Azure Site Recovery. So if you want your DR environment to be on Azure, that's the obvious one to use. Works really well. It will replicate from your site where you've got your current production environment into Azure, and we can help set that up. Final ones are the sort of more modern ones. or the newest ones are VCAV and Zerto. Both work in a very similar way. Zerto's been around for a few years now. We've been using it for about 3-4 years. We've got it built into our Navisite Direct Cloud environments. It can be self-service, so if you want to manage your own sort of DR, it's very, very simple to manage and set up. Works really well. It will replicate from your environment into our cloud nodes. It works in the hypervisor level, so you do have to install some applications for it to work. But like I say, with our NavCloud Direct platforms, it's pre-installed, so you don't have to worry about any of that. And it can be very, very cost-effective. And as you can see, things like the RTO and RPO are really, really good, especially the recovery point objective. It's down in seconds, so it's basically real-time replication. The other one is VCAV, vCloud Availability. That's the one I mentioned, is the one that's literally just been released. As I said, we're one of the first companies in the world to be offering it. Again, it's very configurable, very good RTOs and RPOs. It's got a slightly higher RPO than Zerto, but it's got a quicker RTO, and I'll explain how and why that is in a second. But it's a really cost-effective way of doing it. It's the cheapest one of the lot, really. It's Zerto's really cost-effective, but VCAV is between 40 and 60% more cheaper than Zerto, so it's really cost-effective and it's really easy to use. So differences between backup and DR or replication. So as the graphic shows, the red star in the middle is when you have your crash or your outage, and old style backup, as you can see, sort of the RPO goes from hours to days, and RTO again hours to days. So if you can get away with that, fantastic. It's just about every company will be having backup anyway, so it's a no-cost option if you can get away with it, but most modern companies can't. It's just too long. You can't afford to be down for that length of time. So the next sort of middle technology is snapshots, and snapshots are built into a lot of software and even hardware. There are things like NetApp. NAS units you can do snapshots. You've also got various fans that will do it, but it's also built into things like VMware. You can snapshot your environments at any point, or Hyper-V. So it works well. It's not as good as replication. So the RPOs are minutes to hours, RTOs are sort of minutes as well. So it's much, much better than backup, but it's still not as good as replication. Replication is really the star of that. It's got really short RPOs and really short RTOs as well. So two types of replication. So the real-time is that it happens exactly as it's happening on your production environment. So replication gets copied across to your DR environment, often built into the databases, so they use real-time replication. It's for companies that need various sites to be up, continuously. They can't afford any downtime at all, or very, very little downtime. And we use Zerto the majority of times for this application. And here, real time. So with that one, it's the RTO is slightly worse. So it's up to 15 minutes, which isn't bad. And most companies can get away with 15 minutes. Advantages of the near real time is it's easier to set up normally, and it's normally cheaper as well. And it will copy just about any virtual environment or database across to your DR environment. This is probably the go-to product, as it's in red there for most companies. It's the sort of best compromise between costs and features, and we use VMware vCloud Availability for that one. So exactly what vCloud Availability is, it's very, very similar to Zerto, works in a similar sort of way. The advantages to it, though, is it's actually built into VMware, so you don't have to install any additional software at all. It's built into ESX from version 5 onwards. It works in the same way as Zerto, so you can replicate from on-premise to your cloud provider. One of the really nice features about it is you don't need any special connectivity. So with Zerto, you need like a VPN or a dedicated circuit. With vCloud Availability, you don't need any of that. It replicates across the internet, so as long as you've got an internet connectivity, you can replicate across, and all the traffic is encrypted by SSL, so you don't need to worry about your traffic across the internet. It's all encrypted, so no one can hack into it. So the way Zerto works, what it does is it copies your data across to things called VMDKs. They're basically just a flat file. Nice thing about VMDKs is that the cloud provider, you don't have to worry about any costs that are incurred by memory or CPU usage, because there aren't any, because it's just a flat file. All you pay for is the storage. So it's very cost effective. The downside is to it, when you call the DR, those VMDKs have to be built by VMware and then brought online. Now, it's a pretty quick process. normally sort of 5 to 8 minutes plus per VM, but that obviously does add some time to your DR scenario. So if you need your environment up in seconds, probably not the one to use. But the nice thing about it is it's replicating real time, so you don't lose any data. Only the changes to the VMs are sent across, so it's very, very good for bandwidth. And as I mentioned, as soon as one transmission completes, another one begins immediately. So vCloud works in a similar way, but the VMs at the remote end are actually pre-built. So that saves time when you're bringing your remote site up. You don't have to wait that sort of 5 to 8 minutes for the VMs to be brought up. In a similar way, the VMs are actually powered off, so you don't have to pay for the CPU or memory. All you have to pay for storage. So again, it's really cost effective. Again, only the changes are replicated across, so it's very, very good for your bandwidth. But the difference with this one is it's actually done on a scheduled basis, and you can choose when you're setting it up anywhere from 15 minutes to 24 hours. So just a simple comparison between the two. So Zerto gives you a longer recovery time objective, so that's the amount of time to bring your environment up. So it gives you shorter RPOs, longer RTO. VCAV is the exact opposite. It gives you a lot longer recovery point objective, so it's possible you could lose a small amount of data, but your environment will be back up and running a lot quicker. So I'm just going to show you a very, very quick demo of how VCAV works. I'm not going to, there's no audio in this, you'll be pleased to hear. It's very, very short. It's only 2 minutes as well because it's so simple. And the details on how it works actually come up as the person's actually doing it. Here we go. And that's it. So as you can see, the whole demo took 2 minutes, so that was someone actually setting it up. Really, really quick and simple. You need to choose what you want to replicate across to, recovery point objective you're after, how many copies you want to keep, and that's choose us in the drop-down list. We will provide you with a username, password, and that's it. And it's as simple as that. So you can literally get your DR environment replicated across, set it up in literally minutes. So very simple. So just to give you an example of the costs, so really cost effective. You don't have to set up a secondary environment. If you use DR as a service, you can use us for that. We'll host that environment. You only pay for resources when they're utilized. So normal running, when your production environment's up and running, you literally pay for the storage at the remote end and obviously the license cost of the Zerto or the VCAV. That's it. If it's a DR scenario encountered and you have to bring up your remote environment, then you actually start paying for the CPU and memory, but you're actually using the environment at that point, and it's got you out of a lot of trouble. So hopefully you won't actually mind paying it for it at that point. As you can see, for example, there, so for a typical 100 gig VM, you pay £1 a day for the replication license, and you pay £1.27 in total for the data and replication license, which works out under £40. So for under £40, you can get your VM replicated across and a really good RTO and RPOs. So why use Navisite and Servnet? We're part of a massive, financially stable corporation. We've been around for 20-odd years. We've been a VM partner for 10 years. We're one of their primary partners. We're always featured partner at their kickoffs, the VM World. We've always been positioned as a key partner. As I mentioned earlier, we helped VMware develop VCAV. We've got 150 plus VMware engineers. Also with Zerto, we've been a partner of theirs since basically day one. We've integrated their software into our cloud nodes. So if you want to use self-service DRaaS, then it's you can use that. Very cost-effective, works really well. We're a Microsoft Gold partner. We're also a Microsoft Cloud provider as well. So if you need an Azure environment, we can set that up for you and replicate into that or set up production environments in Azure. We've got tens of thousands of VMs under management today. We have multiple global data centers around the world. And at the moment, we're offering a 30-day free trial on the VCAV. So if you want to test out VCAV, see how it works, see if it fits your requirements, you can use it 30 days for free. If you like it, and just roll over and stop paying for it. If you don't like it, you can just walk away and know it's nothing. So it's a good way to test it. No, just needs a little bit of work to set it up. As you saw, very little bit of work, but then you can test it free for 30 days, see if it meets your requirements. So in summary, so for physical workloads or if there's an unusual replication requirement, then double take is still really your best option. If your application has replication built into it, so the database software or Active Directory or Exchange, something like that, and you can make use of the application itself, the replication built into it, makes sense to use that. If you want to do your environment, your DR environment on Azure, then Azure Site Recovery is a really logical option to use it. If you want to go for the lowest possible RTO, so basically your site up and running as quickly as possible, and the Viva Cloud availability is the best choice for the lowest recovery point objective. So if you can't afford to lose any data, you know, doing web traffic, you're doing go to a best option, and finally, that's for Servnet, helping with all our options.
Thank you for turning that off. Thanks, John. Now is your opportunity to ask any questions, any issues, any questions you want us to maybe follow up with more detail, possibly. Okay, thank you. So any questions you do have following on from that, please reach out to Servnet, and hopefully we can set up a call or face-to-face and ask any questions you have. Following that, just reach out to Servnet, and hopefully we can follow up accordingly. Thank you much for attending.
Thanks, everyone.